Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to this live that I'm doing. Unusually on this page. I haven't been on this page for some time. I usually do these lives in my Facebook group. And just as I've come on to do this live, my dogs have started going nuts. I don't think you'll hear them because the microphone is pretty good at not picking up outside sounds. But if you hear any barking or scuffles, I have a new puppy and she's called Yogi, and I have Asher already, and Asher's a terrier, and Asher likes to make a lot of noise. So welcome. My name is Charli Wall, if you don't know who I am, and I am a mental health coach and counsellor and body therapist, yoga coach, and I've been working in the field of psychiatry for 30 years, and I've been working with the body specifically for 20 years, and I've been doing this current work as a life coach for the last 7 years. And my background, the reason I wanted to do this live is because it's Mental Health Week, as some of you may or may not know. And the topic for this year is anxiety. Now, mental health is very dear to my heart anyway. I worked as a mental health psychiatrist specialist from my early 20s. So I know psychiatry very well. I know it inside and out, and I've had my own experiences with mental health problems, and particularly anxiety and chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. And this manifested in me in many, many, many different ways, including, but probably not limited to, physical symptoms of anxiety, IBS, addiction issues, or certainly I had a lot of habits of behavior, habits of thought, face picking. My hair fell out. I experienced really bad flashbacks, and I had OCD symptoms, and I was very, very poorly quite a lot of the time, physically and mentally. However, having said that, I still was, very successful on the outside, according to kind of society standards. So I set up the service at Addenbrooke's Hospital, the addiction service in Cambridge, and then in my early 30s, I quit that job and became a personal trainer and set up a very wonderful female-only community in Cambridge that was based around health and fitness, and did counselling on the side. And then I sold that business in 2017 when my father died, and I've set up this new business where I work online. So I have clients from all over the world, and I have a very, very wonderful Facebook group called the Freedom Group, which I'll link to in the comments section. So let me know if you're watching this now. Let me know you're here by commenting and saying hello so I can see who's here. And let me know if you're watching later, because I find it really helpful to know if this content is useful for you, because I answer questions of the week most weeks, and people send me questions in and I answer them. And obviously I have that community free group, and I have a circle membership, which is a paid for monthly group where we go a bit deeper into these topics, and we certainly have themed topics once a month. So anxiety, one of the reasons I wanted to do this do this live in this way was because one of my friends, in fact, it was my brother's best friend, he commented on one of my posts and he said to me, "Isn't anxiety a good thing?" And I thought it was such an interesting question, because nobody's asked me that before. But of course, the answer I'm about to give you will be basically saying, whilst it doesn't feel like a good thing, it's It's a result of your body's nervous system being activated to your thoughts, and your brain doesn't know the difference between a perceived threat and a real threat. So let me just see if I can pick this little one up. Hello. So most of you who experience anxiety might have some kind of idea of how it manifests for you, and that might show up in different ways. As I said, I probably wouldn't have even said I had anxiety. I knew I'd been diagnosed with chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, but I just had no idea that what I was experiencing was anxiety. I also knew that I had panic attacks, but it wasn't something that I even really paid much attention to. And the reason being was because I was so used to it. I was so used to feeling the way that I did that I thought it was normal, but I was kind of looking elsewhere for answers. So I had counselling, I had psychotherapy, I paid hundreds and hundreds of pounds on nutritionists, on hair analysis, on kinesthetic testing. I went on retreats. I followed nutrition protocols. I studied nutrition, and nothing seemed to make a difference to my symptoms. I was just getting more tired and more stressed and felt more sick, although I wasn't sick. You know, as I said, the physical symptoms for me were like skin issues and alopecia, and then I would, drink, smoke, I'd starve myself or overeat. So there's this sort of binge starving cycle. What I understand now, and through the learning that I've been doing for the last 6-7 years, is that, of course, that response in your body is a physical response which releases adrenaline, noradrenaline, glucose, amongst other things, as a protective mechanism for you to be able to fight or run away. So if you think about us in our sort of caveman times, our bodies and our brain haven't evolved to be where we are now in the world, with technology and with food being readily available, and the very sort of stressful and intense life that we have removed from nature. Our systems internally haven't evolved in the way that the world has evolved. So the threat now is your thinking. So if you think about just the basic flight or fright response, that is meant to be activated once every 24 to 48 hours. And it's meant to be activated to help you fight or run away. And it's a very brilliant system. And it's not meant to be activated if you're worrying about your relationship, or you're worrying about money, or you're worrying about your work, or you're worrying about whatever. But your brain doesn't know that. So most people are living in this feeling of constant activation. And over many years, your body, I'm going to show you a table in a minute. I'm going to show you a table to help kind of explain this. And then I'm going to go and speak to a couple of the questions that were asked and referenced in my free community in response to them knowing that I was coming on to talk about this. So if you have any questions whilst I'm talking, please post them and I'll see if I can find them on my screen. But I'm just going to try and share my screen with you so that you can see this table that I want you to just have a look at, and I hope it makes sense. I will be doing I don't know if I can share my screen. Oh, yes, I can. I will be looking to do a sort of deeper course around this stuff that kind of goes deeper than my freedom program. So this is just a really sort of basic way of helping you understand what's going on in your system. And I really think this, if nothing else, this will really help you. So if you look at the picture, just look at this top bit here. So you might have heard the stress response be fight, flight, freeze, fawning, and fainting. You might have heard those 5 Fs. But if you look at this top one, you've got fawning and fitting in. Now, there was a guy called Stephen Porges who has done some really wonderful work around the nervous system. And he came up with an idea that he called the polyvagal theory. Poly means many, vagal referencing the vagus nerve, which runs throughout your body. And our first kind of line of defense for survival is called the social nervous system, the social engagement system. And you might kind of be aware of this if you're, going into a social situation. Some of you might even have social anxiety. So this might be important for you to hear. Some of you might be people pleasers, saying sorry all the time. You might be trying to be nice all the time. And this system, so when you're a baby, if you think about, you are a baby, you're a beautiful bundle of joy and love and openness and expansion, but you've been primed by your brain to bond with your parents or your caregivers. And that's kind of one of your primary missions. And so to do that, it's like eye contact and smiles, and you will mirror your parents. So those of you who have babies or remember having babies or who have been around babies will be aware that you can look at the baby and you can make little faces and little noises, and the baby will mimic you. And that's called mirroring. And so ideally, the mother and father will be attuning to the baby's needs, hopefully. And the mother, as a woman who has more estrogen in her system naturally, because she's a woman, she's given birth, and she has a monthly cycle, she's more impacted by this social nervous system because evolution wanted her to not kill her babies or kick them away. And the evolution thought, obviously didn't think, but like evolution is pretty fucking brilliant. Divine intelligence is pretty fucking amazing. So they thought, we're not going to take any chances. We're going to give the woman extra estrogen. She can make babies and bond with them. So there's a thing, a biochemical called oxytocin that's also released when we hug our babies, when we hug our children, when we hug our partners, when we hug our pets. This little one's on my lap now, so that's good. And because of that, women tend to be more impacted by this social nervous system, and they're also conditioned to be nice. They're conditioned to be good girls. Now, I'm being very generic. Obviously, this is in all humans. So if you just think about this as a first line of defense, this is why lots of people, when we had what I consider to be hideous mask wearing mandate, people felt activated and scared because they couldn't see the face of the person. So that kind of first line of defense was taken away from everybody. So it activated a lot of people's systems, because what we're doing is we're looking at the signals from the face to ascertain whether we're safe or not, because ultimately humans are looking and driven by survival, and so they want to feel safe. So if you just look at this first top piece here, fawning meaning people pleasing, you've got niceness, appease, and acquiesce. So it's going from the bottom to the top. And fitting in, loneliness, isolation, imposter syndrome. If you've experienced any of these things, it's because your social nervous system has been activated and you don't feel safe. So you're either going into hypervigilance to make sure everyone else is okay before yourself. You might be one of those people that looks after everyone else before yourself. You might be not speaking your truth for fear. And often those of us who have, because our primary job, programming is to bond with our caregivers, if we haven't got our needs met, we can go into making sure our parents are okay before ourselves. So this is important if you're experiencing any symptoms, because you can, as I go through this list, you'll be able to potentially assess yourself in any moment in what kind of nervous system activation that you are in, so that you can learn to regulate yourself, i.e., is there a real threat, or is this just coming from my thinking? And a lot of this over many years becomes programmed and neurologically wired. Neurons that fire together wire together, you'll have heard that. So a lot of this stuff becomes habitually activated. So the first line of defense is your social nervous system. The second line of defense from the sympathetic nervous system is our flight and fight, which I know most of you will have heard of. So if you look at flight here, the first line is worry, then we've got fear, anxiousness, terror, and panic. So if any of you have felt anything that you consider to be any of these symptoms, you worry a lot, you feel fear, you feel anxious, you feel terror, you're going into panic attacks, it's because you're in the flight response. So the running away. So remember, you've got adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, amongst other things. Your sex hormones switched off, your immunity switches off, your digestive, oh gosh. Your digestive system switches off. So you don't want to be having sex, your food won't be digested, causing IBS and any number of stomach issues and other kind of nutritional deficiencies. This also, and all of these, all of these things are happening when your nervous system is activated, because remember what I said at the beginning, you're running away for survival. So your body is not wanting to focus on its immunity, this sort of long-term health stuff. It's not going to be wanting to focus on your digestion. In fact, when you are running away from a threat, your system usually evacuates. So you might be sick, or you might need the toilet as urgency. And I'm going to come back to this point about the body as well, because this again is important. So the next one, if we go over here, is fight. So if you look at these, irritation, frustration, anger, rage, annihilation, if you feel any of these things, it's because your fight response has been activated, which is similar to this one, but it kind of manifests in a different way. And you might find that you go up and down this through your life. So it might be that you felt all of these. I have felt all of these. So there's nothing wrong with you. If you have felt all of these, there's nothing wrong with you. If you haven't felt all of these, you will be able to identify in different situations to different ways of being, and it will be completely unique for you in terms of how you were programmed and conditioned when you were younger. The last one is freeze, parasympathetic dorsal vagal. And we'll start at the bottom and go to the top. Confusion, disorientation, numbness, apathy, helplessness, resignation, and collapse. Suicidal ideation happens a lot around here. And I hear this a lot from many of the people that come into my community, or many of the people that I work with. So if you feel like disassociated or memory loss or confused, and people will kind of dismiss that and say, oh, I've just had a baby, or I'm menopausal, or, I'm just overtired, or I'm overworked. These are signs and symptoms that your nervous system has been activated into freeze. Now, if you think about this is the first line, this is the second line, this is the third line of defense. If this doesn't work, we'll go to here. If this doesn't work, we'll go to here. Now, many of us, obviously, as children, have learned these. And if this hasn't worked as we go along in our life, we're tending to go kind of on a wave through all of these. And a lot of us as children, wouldn't necessarily have been able to fight or run away. And so freeze would have been the only option. And over much time, and it's an autonomic nervous system, over a lot of time, this has an impact on your system, on your regulation, on your immunity, on your digestion, on your sexual health, on your reproductive health. It has a huge effect on everything. And most people are looking to supplements and diets and nutrition and not looking at nervous system health and or kind of brain health, inflammatory ways of living. On top of that, I want to just say this one piece because I think this is important. If you think about this as a survival response and you are running away or fighting for survival, your focus is going to be on your body. Just going to see if I can stop the share. Your focus is going to be on your body. And why is this important? Well, if you're running away, you need to know where your body is in space to be able to run or fight or flee or like whatever it is that, you know, that you might be doing as a human, which means you become body aware. So for a lot of my clients, they are they have issues around body image, they have issues around food, they have issues around self-concern, they have issues around fitting in. What do people think of me? Do they like me? Am I too fat? Am I too thin? And they start to not realize or understand the reason that they're thinking about their body or internalizing stuff is because that's nature's way of, that's a survival response. And if you're little and you haven't had your needs met or haven't been able to articulate your needs in a way that was unconditionally received and held, and you were supported in your fullness, which, let's face it, most of us aren't, and neither were our parents and so on and so forth. So I'm not blaming anybody here, but you just learn kind of maladaptive ways of calming down your own nervous system, which include and are not limited to the things that I said that I did. So, you know, smoking, drinking, undereating, overeating, over-exercising, picking my skin, OCD behaviors. These are all ways in which I innocently thought I was keeping myself safe. Now, I didn't know that until I knew that. I didn't know that until I understood the principles that I teach, which is a foundation that I teach, that all thought is neutral and that it's moving through us and that our thoughts are not who we are. But when we've been activating the same pattern and believing the same thing over and over again for many, many years, that becomes internalized. So if little me can't get my needs met, little me is going to internalize the reason why and make it my fault. There's something wrong with me. I better make myself better. I better make myself good. I better be good, be the best that I can be so that I'm accepted and loved and validated. So many of us, and I speak to hundreds of people who are deeply unhappy, who don't know that this is going on in their system, and that this innocent creation of who they think they are, that they're identifying with, that's based on external circumstances or society's standards of what's success is. But that's all in the world of form, and that's all changeable, and it's not important, because I have been a child, I have been a teenager, I have been a young woman, I have been a teacher training student, I have been a student nurse, I've been a qualified nurse, I've been, you know, I started and set up Adam Brooks addiction service in my early 30s. I've been the owner of a female community in Cambridge. I've been a mother. I've been a daughter. I've been a carer. I'm none of those things permanently. Now, in this moment, I'm a dog mum. My son's left home. I have this wonderful business, this wonderful community of women, but that isn't who I am. However, if I identify with those things, i.e., what I look like, the shape of my body, the skin on my face, the hair on my head, my job, my earnings, my relationship, I'm going to, usually, because they're transient and changeable and superficial, I'm usually going to fall short, because I'm going to keep thinking there's something wrong with me, and I'm going to keep looking outside of me to try and get something I've already got. Right? I've already got everything I need. What you're looking for, you're looking with. Now, I didn't understand this. I went all over the world to try and find this elusive concept that I'd kept hearing, which is it's inside of me. And I was like, but where the fuck is that? Like, where? I went to India and I went all over the place looking, how can I find this? And once I saw it very deeply, I realized all of the effort that I had been putting into keeping myself safe. I didn't know I was safe. I didn't understand that I'd been regulating or regulated or trained to regulate to my parents' nervous system, who were also dysregulated, again, not their fault. And I was just learning through a nervous system that was trying to protect me. Okay. So once you start to see in any moment, firstly, that you're safe, secondly, that your body is working perfectly. Your body is working perfectly. It's working always to protect you and take care of you. If you understand that and you feel rage or you feel anxiety or you feel like an imposter, you'll be able to start to see, oh, right, this is what Charli spoke about. This must be an activation of my nervous system. Unfortunately, over many years of activation, we kind of go into this immobilization. So many people feel like, you know, they've got one foot on the brake and one foot on the accelerator, and they just don't know who they are and where they are, and they feel lost. I hear this a lot. I feel lost. Now, if you think about wild animals don't get traumatized, and there's a point to this story, so bear with me. So if you think about a deer being chased, so we have some woods here in Norfolk, beautiful woods, and there's always deer running about. And often there's big dogs running about, and the big dogs will chase the deer. Now, in scenario one, the deer, its flight and fright system's been activated and it's running. It's the prey, and the dog, the predator, is also now running, and they're going at 70 miles an hour. Now, in this scenario, the deer escapes, the dog doesn't catch it and goes on its way. Neither are traumatized. Both of them shake it off, and then they go on their way. In scenario two, the deer's running at 70 miles an hour. The dog is running at 70 miles an hour. The deer trips, and in that moment goes into freeze. So now it collapses and it looks like it's dead. In this scenario, the dog goes up to the deer, sniffs the deer, gets bored, and goes off. So the predator is now gone. This system, designed by evolution or divine intelligence, means that the deer can get up, look around, shake it off, and move on with its day. But if you think about that deer that was running at 70 miles an hour and then suddenly goes dead, plays dead, that system's still going at 70 miles an hour whilst it's immobilized. So that's the accelerator and the brake at the same time. Now the deer gets up, shakes it off, discharges that emotional charge, that physical charge, and goes on its way happily, untraumatized. We humans have disconnected from nature, disconnected from our body, and don't discharge that energy, and spend years often going up and down the scale of that nervous system, to the point where so many people I meet are so exhausted by the time they come to me, they don't understand that they're in that immobilization, have been for some time. So adrenally, they're a bit compromised. Their digestion might have caused other problems. Their reproductive organs might be compromised. They might feel like they're getting ill all the time, like there's these undiagnosed pains. So many of this stuff can be traced back to earlier in life, when there hasn't been an activation, a discharge, movement, connection to the earth, connection to your body, the body is always sending you signals. So I really hope that that makes sense for you. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to just go to a couple of the questions that came in my group, if I can find them. And there are some really good questions here. So that's the kind of introductory summary, if you like. And I haven't really sort of talked about the principles, but if you go back on my page or back on my Instagram, I did a little summary around the 3 principles, which are the foundation, again, as I've said, of me really understanding the inside out nature of life, like it's coming from inside of me. Most of us think we're looking out there, and we are looking out there, and we are thinking that the outside world, people and circumstances can impact us. But this is the thing about your nervous system. Any kind of trauma, however that kind of word sits for you or feels for you, or your experience in life, will be completely unique for you. One person's trauma might be another person's, like it wouldn't have even, registered on their in their being. Whereas for something else, tripping up when they were 5 might have really traumatized them. So I'm not here to tell you what is trauma and what isn't trauma, because it's completely subjective to the individual. And that's why understanding education, understanding awareness for your own self is going to be so important, right? Now, a lot of these symptoms, I also hear people say to me, well, that sounds like ADHD and all of this stuff. What I would say is that the female brain works very differently to the male brain. That's the first thing. And secondly, a lot of these can be traced back to experiences in younger life where the child didn't feel safe for whatever reason. And of course, that's going to be completely subjective and unique for you. But there is nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. This is a misunderstanding, and awareness and education and understanding will really help you to notice what's going on for you. So one of the questions that I got asked in my group was that one of the ladies has said there's some things going on that she's got, children and grandchildren, and she's struggling with being in demand with her children and her grandchildren. And she then feels like, then she's judging herself and thinking she's sounding ungrateful. And she says, I can't cope with it. I can't cope with life at all. I have a lump in my throat and I feel like I'm choking all the time and I'm holding my breath. I'm eating crap and too much on it. I've gained nearly 2 stone and I hate it as I'm too tight to buy new clothes. Could this be an age thing, Charlie? I'm 60 in January and I want to run away and never come back. It's not an age thing. I'm not going to name you. I'm not going to name anyone who asked the question, just in case. It's not an age thing. It's a thinking thing, and it's an overwhelm thing. And it sounds to me like you have gone into that kind of social nervous system, like I have to be nice, I have to be there, I have to, be available, but it's overwhelming your system. And because you're not able to say no, or not today, or I'm going to rest today. So this is another huge thing for people. They don't know how to rest. They don't know how to say no. And this has been such a big learning for me, because that was me too. And guess why? Well, because I wanted to people please, because I was conditioned and programmed to say yes and be a good girl and not take up too much space. And because of that, by the time women get a little bit older, they're so conditioned that they feel overwhelmed, and it's because you're not speaking your truth. It's because you're not putting yourself at the top of the list. And the more stressed we are about that, the more your system gets activated, the more you're going to do a habit, i.e. eating, drinking, scrolling, whatever the thing might be, because you're trying to settle something down, which your brain has remembered works. The problem then is you have judgment on it. Now, if you think back to what I was saying, any stress response activates that system, which, accelerates us, heart rate is higher, etc., turns off digestion. If I'm then eating, I'm going to put on weight, because weight is a protective mechanism for the body. And now I become body aware because I'm stressed, right? Rather than running away or fighting, I'm now internalizing that all. My system's activated. The food's not getting digested properly. I'm probably malnourished, even though my body may look overweight, quote unquote, and I don't think it is, but because I see that as a protective mechanism. I see that as someone not being able to speak their truth, someone carrying shame, blame, guilt, sadness, thinking they're not good enough, thinking they're broken. The fact that you want to run away and never come back is your no, your feminine no, but you're not able to do so. So it looks like all the people and things have to go. But that's not the truth. The truth is you have to be able to put yourself first and take care of yourself to be able to take care of others. And understanding this nervous system bit and understanding why you've probably had anxiety for some time. There'll be different themes that happen for lots of people because the brain's always looking for evidence of its theory. This is called confirmation bias. And also the brain is always looking out for danger because of the survival mechanism that I spoke about. So this is called a negativity bias. So no, there's nothing wrong with you, and it's not because you're 60, and it's not an age thing. This is programming and conditioning and not trusting yourself and not feeling safe to say no. The next question I got was, can anxiety be rooted in anger, especially towards oneself? I asked the lady why she'd asked that, and she said, it's something that's come up for me in the last few days, and the realization I have is that this anger has always been there since childhood, and not being able to express it, as I saw around me how anger manifests, and I didn't want to behave like that nor feel it. Now I have this insight, what can I do with this anger? So that anger is, again, a stress response. If you haven't been shown how to express yourself, your fullness in a sort of in safety, you're going to think that you're going to carry shame around it. So I would encourage you to do something that has you ground to the earth, moving, shaking, playing drums, anything that has you kind of, even if you just like not jump up and down on the earth in bare feet, but like lift your heels and bounce, because even that will have some emotional discharge, not emotional, sorry, the physical discharge from all of that nervous system activation. But it's a very gentle and tender approach. But yes, I do think it's probably rooted in anger because you've internalized it and your system's still activated. So what you're calling anxiety, I'm calling a nervous system activation that has physical symptoms, because you don't realize you're safe and you don't realize you're okay and you can express yourself as you see fit. The problem is most people are carrying around years of guilt and shame and blame and all sorts of judgment being extraordinarily common and very habitual. There's something wrong with me. That's the basis of that. Just allow yourself to hear the words that I'm saying very, very loosely, maybe come back and listen to this, because there's nothing wrong with anger. Anger is a healthy expression of, when you feel a threat or when your boundaries are being, pushed. So allowing yourself to express how you feel is important. And of course, a lot of women, particularly, but of course, men get this as well, depending on how they've been brought up. But women especially are taught to not get angry and turn the other cheek and not express themselves because it's too loud and you're too naughty and you should be seen and not heard, and all the other messages that we pick up. Cross your legs, stay small. But anger's important. Again, for women, anger is going to come round more often at a certain time of the month. Now, I don't have that in my life anymore, and so I don't have the intensity of that cycle in my life. And because I'm not stressed, I don't have any intensity actually at all. And I'm very aware and body aware of my own kind of intracycle. But a lot of women who haven't got this awareness and are stressed all of the time have compromised hormones, which means their anger is more evident to themselves and other people around them, because they're not listening to themselves, they're not trusting themselves, they're causing themselves stress. And that no is so strong at those times of the month. But then they go into guilt. I shouldn't have shouted at my children. I shouldn't have shouted at my husband. There's something wrong with me. So just think of yourself as a holistic, organic, changeable, rather wonderful, magical human that has everything going for you, and there's nothing wrong. One of the last questions that I got, because I'm going to finish this shortly and hope it has been helpful, is one of the ladies said, I've been thinking about resistance. I find it hard to notice my resistance. I never thought I was anxious, but I see that clearly now when it appears, but thinking more about the connection of the two. So I said to her, can you please expand what you mean? What does resistance mean for you? And she said, is there a difference? I'm trying to find an answer, trying to control a situation so I feel safe. I'm trying to avoid the wrong outcome, which is crazy. I don't have a crystal ball, feeling frozen and repeating bad habits to comfort the feeling of what's going on. So she says, so I guess a lot of the anxiety is resistance. I would say, as I'll reiterate, this is you trying to feel safe, trying to control situations because your brain is, again, wonderful, but it's a machine, and your brain is always going to be thinking about the past because that's how it's survived thus far, to predict the future. So most of us are trying to control from our past to make sure our future is in the known, i.e., if I'm in the known, I am safe. But we're never in the known. All we have is this moment right now. And so once you start to see, yes, you've probably been freezing, and you have been for some time, you've called them comfort habits, which of course bring you comfort because there's an easing off of your heavy thinking or worry. And that's why people do it, but they do it because they're numbed out and they've collapsed in the freeze and they're immobilized. So they're trying to do anything and everything to come out of that or stop themselves from feeling, if that's what you've been taught and conditioned to do. There's nothing wrong with any of it. The biggest problem is you have judgment on the comfort habits, and you're paying attention to your brain, which is trying to keep you safe, but only from the past. So you have to come into your body. You have to think about, how can I come into this present moment right now? And how can I sort of ground in my body? And because most of us are disconnected from our bodies, Most of us are looking down at a small phone. And again, I think this, you might find this important. If I'm looking at a laptop or a small phone, I'm narrowing my awareness. It narrows our gaze. And a narrowed gaze is a threat gesture, telling our system we need to pull all of our energetic resources in because I'm under threat, i.e. I'm coming into a fight, or, I'm squaring up to someone. What you'll find, if you have a memory of that, is that your gaze goes narrow. So if I'm looking at my phone or my laptop or a screen all day long, my system thinks it's a threat, which means all of those systems are going to be activated. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, glucose. I'm being really basic with those, just so you get an idea. Glucose is the sugar. People often say to me, I'm putting on all this weight and I don't know why, because I'm eating so healthily and I'm moving. It's because you're stressed. It's because your digestion switches itself off. It's because the layer of adipose tissue is a protective mechanism, because our viscera is on the front here. We used to be on all fours, right? Now we're bipedal. So our focus is out, our viscera is vulnerable. But if my gaze is narrowed, it feels like I'm in threat. A layer of fat is going to make sense for the body because it's trying to protect you. But if I'm looking at a screen all the time, small screen, laptop, TV, the gaze is going to be narrowed. It tends to mean that my forehead is in a forward position, and we're more likely to have an eye forward position as a result. So even whilst you're listening to me now, look up, look around you, get a sense for where you are in this moment right now. Take your hands and feel the back of your head. Just get some awareness for your back body. Most of us have lost this connection. We're so focused on the front. And most of us are on our screens too much. Now, if you can get into the body in a moment and become present to where you are in the world, wherever you are, it will bring you back. And you'll be able to see, oh, I was just, imagining something really bad from my past. I was imagining something really bad in my future, but I'm actually here now. I've only got now. Nothing from the future can hurt me, and the past is already gone. I have a brain that's a machine, and it's trying to help me figure this life out. And I think I get life wrong. I think there's something wrong with me, and I think I'm broken. None of those things are true. You have a perfectly brilliant working brain, a perfectly brilliant working mind, a perfectly brilliant working body, no matter what age or form or state it's in. And my guess is you've probably experienced a lot of stress in one form or another that you've considered to be stressful for you subjectively. And that understanding this more deeply can help you understand that there's actually nothing wrong with quote unquote anxiety. It's a feeling of feeling unsafe that has activated your very brilliant system, and probably has done for a long time, too long. The more grounded you can get in the present, in knowing that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're okay, that you might experience anxiety, but that doesn't mean you are anxious, that you might experience periods of eating too much, drinking too much, scrolling too much, all of those things that you might have judgment about, but it doesn't mean that's who you are. You're a bundle of quite wonderful cells that change. All of the cells in your body change. You're not the same physical human as you were 10 years ago. I mean, it's extraordinary that we're trying to find grounding in thoughts, emotions, psychology, physical form that's always changing. It is like chasing shadows, because those parts of us are changeable, transient. They're not, I'll be different again in 2 years. I won't have the same skin. I won't have the same cells of my heart, of my liver, of my kidney, of my brain. But what stays the same? It's that part of you that's always been there, the part of you that's always been the same from birth until now. The essence of you hasn't changed. And if you can just get a sense of that, the wonder of that, the magic of that, you won't be so inclined to try and get grounded from anything that's moving and changing and transient, because that is not who you are. The problem is we identify with symptoms and behaviors and our past, and we think that's relevant now in this moment, and it isn't, because every moment is different and new. And by understanding that and deepening your relationship to your body and yourself and nature and all of the things that bring you joy, you'll be able to find some space between the predictable narrator and the truth of what I'm saying. And that's where you'll find hope, and that's how you'll heal. So I hope this has been helpful. I struggled with many, many, many years of anxiety, PTSD, self-concern, body image issues, dysfunctional relationship with myself, with food, with alcohol, with substances, all of it. And I am here today at the grand old age of 51 to tell you, you don't have to wait as long as I did. And there is hope. There is hope. Some months ago, I shared a video of me being coached back in 2017. If you want to see that video, let me know, and you'll see just how fucked I thought I was, because you'll see it in my face, in my energy. You'll hear it in my voice. You'll see it in my expression and how I show up in the world. And then you can compare that me to this me, and you'll see how this understanding and this learning has changed my life, and it can change yours as well. So I feel very, very honored that you've listened thus far. Thank you very much. I hope you've taken away some stuff. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is. Or if you want to see that video of me being coached, just let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you very soon. Take care.